Let's get ready to mortgage. He is the prince of programs, guru of guidelines, master of matrices. He puts the fun in funding. Please welcome Mark, Mr. Mortgage Eitel.
All right. Hey guys, it's Mark Eitel here, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And sit down and buckle up because this is going to be a fun one. Man, I am wound up. This is a high octane show this week, and it all stems from a headline, which on the surface was a great headline. But when you read the data, the headline is being misconstrued and being shared as this, guiding light and super positive news going into the 2024 housing market. And I want to dissect the data behind it because, guys, the data can be deceiving. And that drives me crazy because you hear me say all the time, the path is in the math and depend on the data. Well, this is a perfect example how some cherry picking of the data can be done to create a headline, which on the surface is super positive, or in some cases super negative, but when you read the data, it has the opposite effect. And a lot of real estate professionals are running around on social media right now with this headline in tow, touting the misrepresentation of the data. So, guys, we're going to dive into that. Again, my name is Mark Eitel. You're listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. We do this each week to give you the data. Again, the real stuff, not the headlines, but the data, the tips, the tricks, the strategies, and all the information that you need so you can make better real estate and mortgage decisions for you and your family. And guys, we encourage your participation. If you have questions or comments along the way, just call or text 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline. Jen is womanning the hotline, and she will get your questions on the air. Or you can head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. There's a big orange button in the middle of the screen that says get your questions on the air. It's super intuitive. Follow the instructions. They'll pop up on our end, and Jen will read your question on the air for you. So, without further ado, let's dive into this headline, guys. Mortgage demand jumps nearly 10%, even as interest rates tick up again. And I guess let's touch on that. Interest rates have ticked up again. A lot of people haven't looked at rates since, before Christmas, and the Fed meeting minutes were interpreted as rate cuts ahead. And we saw mortgage interest rates pull back on all that excitement, right? From over 8% to the low sixes. And it was an exciting time for a few weeks there. Well, we've reversed course and we've ticked back up to the high sixes. Now, no fear in the market at the moment. You got to think about interest rates like you do sitting on the beach watching the tide either come up or down. You're watching the tide approach your chair. One wave crashes on the beach. It comes up towards you, but the water pulls back until the next wave crashes up a little farther. In that trend, there are ups and downs. There are increases and pullbacks. And we're seeing that right now. Overall, the forecasts are still for lower interest rates. But man, we're not going to see some of these rates people are predicting in the fours. That's crazy talk. I would be surprised if we get, sub sixes, maybe mid to high fives, but I'm not holding out for that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're in a stagnant environment for a while. Okay, back to the headline. Mortgage demand jumps nearly 10%. What's got me so fired up is a lot of agents on social media are taking this headline and saying, see guys, I told you demand is surging, crazy market ahead, get in ahead of everybody else before there are lines around the block and multiple offers and waiving inspections and appraisals. And man, if your agent's telling you to waive all that stuff, that drives me crazy to see buyers waive the protections in the contract. Another thing that drives me crazy is the term, we won the offer. No, you didn't win the offer. It's not a contest. It's not a sweepstakes. Your purchase offer was accepted. Now you got to sign on the dotted line and go hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars into debt to buy this thing and be responsible for its upkeep and the debt service on it for the next up to 30 years. So anyway, a lot of people are taking this headline and implying that this demand surge means buyers are flying out of the woodwork, right? Because a 10% jump, that's a big number. Well, let's dissect the data behind it. Purchase applications were up week over week, 6%. Now, think about that for a minute. What was last week? We were finishing up the 2023 holiday season, right? Christmas was behind us. We're coming into the New Year weekend. Traditionally not an active time in real estate. So almost always the first week in January, the numbers are going to be up week over week. So anemic, right? But 6% increase. However, guys, 16% lower than this week last year. Mortgage applications for purchases were 16% lower year over year. So I've emphasized purchases twice, which means this big surge has come from refinance activity. Refinances up 19% week over week, but 30% year over year. Wow, that's a big surge, a 30% increase in refinance activity. And you've got to keep in mind, this week last year, interest rates were a little bit lower than they are today. So in the face of a higher interest rate, there's a 30% bounce in refinance applications. So that headline had nothing to do with buyers coming out of the woodwork. It had to do with consumers who are burdened by debt, credit card debt over $1 trillion. Car payments, people are starting to miss car payments. And don't get me started on the pandemic purchase of cars. People overpaid for cars wildly. The values have come back down, so most people with a used car are upside down. They can't trade that car unless they're rolling that negative equity into the new loan, defeating the purpose because their payment's going to go up, a bigger loan amount and a higher interest rate. They can't sell it unless they're reaching in their pocket because it's worth less than they owe. So you couple that with all of this credit card debt, and yes, the Fed has paused, but he hasn't started to cut. And until he starts to cut, credit card interest rates aren't coming down. So people are feeling the burden of all of this consumer debt, and they're going to the one place they have left, which is all that equity. And guys, if there's any positive in all of this, home values continue to appreciate. Detroit saw ridiculous appreciation in November, and good on them because that market has had challenges with values over the years. So I'm glad they're getting a nice chunk of appreciation. But my point is, this headline could very easily read, data indicates the American consumer is cracking under the pressure of all of this debt. But instead it says mortgage demand jumps nearly 10% even as interest rates tick back up. And you've got the real estate profession running around saying this is an indication of an increase in buyer demand when the data does not support that. So guys, always, always, always dig past the headlines and put your hands in the soil. Get a hold of the data, because if you would have stopped at that headline, you would not have the same insight that you do now. So that's all I had with that. I'm not saying anything negative about the real estate market. I believe that we're going to be in this market for a while, meaning not a lot of people are wanting to sell. And at these interest rates, there's still ample demand. So if you're a seller, you're likely to get a good price for your house and get it under contract relatively quickly. If you're a buyer, you're still going to have to ready yourself before you go out there and start looking at properties. I don't think we have a 30% appreciation cycle over the next 3 years, and I don't think we have a depreciation cycle. I think we're in a normal real estate market. But guys, you hear the music, you know what that means? That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this very short break. We'll be back with more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Hey guys, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Guys, we are so much more than just a mortgage show. We're helping families every day from coast to coast with their mortgage needs. Want to connect? Check out MrMortgageRadio.com. My team and I are here and happy to help. Again, it's Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Guys, you heard the man. If you want your questions or comments on the air, you can call or text 855-462-7292. Again, that number is 855-462-7292. You can call or text the Anytime hotline. Jen is womanning the hotline, and she will get your questions on the air. If you prefer to send them over the web, just head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. It's much easier now. There's a big orange button right in the middle of the screen that says Get Your Questions on the Air. Just click that button, follow the instructions. They'll end up on our end, and Jen will read your questions on the air. Guys, thanks for bearing with my opening rant. It just drives me crazy when the data is misrepresented for the sole purpose of either, self-serving reasons, or in the case of the headlines, it's just clickbait, man. Just give us the data. People are curious enough. We're paying very close attention to the economy. It's an election year. People are nervous. What's happening? The cost of living, even though everybody is telling us that inflation is going away and, we've won and we're coming into a soft landing, I still see the painful looks on the faces of people at the grocery store. I'm feeling it myself. It's partially embarrassing and partially frustrating to have a choice in my right hand and a choice in my left hand at the grocery store and having to make it based on price. So these reporters and journalists do not need to misrepresent the data with a crazy clickbaity headline. Guys, we're going to read it anyway. We want to know what's going on, but we want the truth. So that reminds me of that movie. You can't handle the truth. Guys, we can handle the truth. Just serve it up to us. We'll figure it out for ourselves. We don't need you to tell us how to think or how to interpret the data, because the path is in the math, but you got to get to the data so you can make sense of it. All right, guys. Jen's laughing at me because I am wound up. Yes, I am caffeinated today, so this will be a fun one. But I'm going to throw it over to Jen, and let's get some questions on the air. I'm ready if you are.
Sharon sent us this. When I'm being approved for a mortgage, do they factor in my current lease payment? I have 8 months left on my lease. If I buy now, I'll have 2 payments for a while. Will I have to wait?
Hey, Sharon, this is a very, very good question. And a lot of people don't think about this. They get super excited and they fall in love with this house and they go out and they get their mortgage approval and they're afraid to tell their landlord that they want to break the lease because they want to make sure they're going to get the house. And then here you are, in this instance, stuck with 8 months worth of double payments in your case. So to answer your question, sadly, no. It's not taken into your debt to income calculations when you're getting your approval. There's some assumptions being made, and perhaps that should change. The assumption is that you've negotiated a way out of the lease. And right now, most landlords are willing to work with people. At least we're seeing it in our practice. And I'm not implying that this is always the case, because there are people that will hold you to that contract. And I had an interesting conversation with a broker owner, a friend of mine in the Boston area. And they're finding the same circumstance to hold true, that a lot of landlords are happy to let you out of your lease early or let you convert to month while you go through this process, because they want the opportunity to get a fresh tenant in there at a higher rent rate. But again, there's no guarantee that that's the case. But my suggestion to you would be, if you don't want to wait, have the discussion with your landlord. And just let the landlord know that you're considering purchasing a property. And would they, if you get under contract on a purchase, allow you to go month to month so that you're not stuck with 2 payments? And if they hold your feet to the fire and they don't give you a choice, then waiting may be the best option, because paying for your rental unit and your mortgage at the same time, that can't be fun for anyone. Unless you've got that money budgeted in, I don't think that I would recommend that. And from your mortgage approval process, as I mentioned, that is not factored in there. So there's some assumptions being made that you've negotiated an early exit with your current lease. So I hope that helps. And guys, I don't ever recommend just bailing in the middle of the night and not telling your landlord, because then your landlord can take you through an eviction process and you have a negative credit event on your credit history, or they could get a judgment against you, which is again negatively impacting your credit. So it makes no sense to do all this work and get mortgage ready and then just shoot yourself in the foot credit wise by doing the old midnight run and bailing on the landlord. So it always helps to have that conversation up front and be perfectly clear with everybody what's going on. But great question. And maybe in the future, as mortgage professionals, we should take that into consideration. But right now, it's not a topic of conversation, nor a debt being calculated on the DTI ratios. So great question. I appreciate that. And I hope that helped. Hey, Jen, throw me another question.
Keith has this question. Is it possible to buy a house and the vacant property next door at the same time with one mortgage?
Wow, you guys, man, we got the best listeners in all of real estate and mortgage radio. This is another great question. Yes, and I know that people are out there saying, no, it's not, I tried it. Guys, you can definitely do this, assuming the properties are contiguous, right? They're touching. There's a term called assemblage where those two properties, the vacant lot and your property, can become one parcel at closing. And in that instance, if you can assemble the properties at closing, then you can do one mortgage and purchase the property and the vacant parcel as a primary residence and benefit from the lower interest rate and the lower down payment. The other option, the more traditional option, what most people think you've got to do is purchase the lot with a lot loan, assuming it qualifies for a lot loan. And you may have to put as much as 50% down on the lot. And then that's a much shorter loan with a higher interest rate. And then buy the primary residence with whatever mortgage program you were going to use, right? FHA, VA, conventional. You're putting half down on the lot and whatever you intended to put down on the property. Where if you can do this assemblage strategy, you're putting just the lower percentage down on the combined properties because they're going to become one at closing. Man, Keith, thanks for that question, brother. That was a good one. I don't often get to talk about assemblage. Most people don't realize it's an option. And in this case, it can significantly improve your interest rate and reduce the amount of money out of pocket to make the purchase. So if you or anybody out there has questions about that, give me a shout. I'll be happy to walk you through it, and we can jump in and help any way we can. Hey guys, but you hear the music? You know what that means? We got to jump into a commercial break. That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this short break. We'll be back with more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show, and I'm going to interrupt this commercial break to ask you for a favor. If you know any friends, family, coworkers, or the guy in front of you at the grocery line who's talking or thinking about buying or selling or refinancing real estate, I'm hoping I can count on you to help me spread the word, introduce them to me, to the team. You can do that by simply sharing MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. Guys, it's Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005. Now, back to the commercials.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Guys, if you have questions or comments and you want them on the air, just call or text 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline. And Jen is womanning the hotline, and she will get your questions on the air. Or head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. And right in the middle of the page is a big orange button that says get your questions on the air. You can't miss it. You might be distracted by my mug for a minute, but the button's there, I promise. Just click that button, follow the instructions, and your questions will pop up on our end, and Jen will read them on the air for you. Guys, speaking of Jen and your questions, and we've had some good ones so far today. I don't often get to talk about assembling properties. So that's always an interesting topic of conversation. And again, if anybody out there has additional questions regarding that, just give me a call off the air and I'll walk you through the details. So that was a good one, but let's keep the good ones coming. Hey, Jen, do you have another question ready?
This one is from Iris. I know there is a way I can sell my house to my son and give him the down payment. The problem is I don't have the extra cash right now. Can I just lower the price so he doesn't need a down payment?
Hey, Iris, this is another great question. Man, I don't know what everybody did over the holiday break, but you guys boned up and brought your A game because we've had nothing but awesome questions this week. So the lowering the price thing is not going to help because the loan amount is going to be based on the purchase price or the appraisal, whichever's lower. So lowering the purchase price doesn't help. But here's the good news, Iris. In this context, if you're selling your son your home and you've got equity in it, you can gift him the equity. You don't have to gift him cash money for him to put down on the property. You're allowed to gift the equity. So let's use very, very round numbers for conversational purposes. And let's say you're going to sell the property for $100,000. And guys, I know there aren't any $100,000 properties out there anymore unless you live in fantasy land, but $100,000 property. And let's say the objective is to get him into the property with an 80% loan so he doesn't have mortgage insurance. And again, these are just round numbers. I'm not factoring in closing costs, but you can write the contract where mom sells the property to son for $100,000 with a $20,000 gift of equity. That means he would qualify for an 80% loan at $80,000. So he's bringing no money to the table. And guys, again, the numbers need to be adjusted to include closing costs and all of the details. This is just a round number explanation. That way, mom doesn't have to gift any cash. No funds have to transfer. The money is in the property. So you can accomplish exactly what you're trying to accomplish without having to write checks or transfer money from you to your son. It's a gift of equity strategy, and you can gift him enough money, assuming there's enough equity in there, that he can come to closing with zero money out of pocket, and then you can still profit the difference. And that's where this is really, really powerful. Let's say mom's in the big house that she raised the kids in, and her intent from day one was to leave the property to her son. However, she's done. She's burdened by the big house. It's too much to maintain. There's too many memories, whatever it is. She's ready to move on. She's got her eye on this awesome little 1-bedroom, 1-bath villa in the active adult community with the pickleball court and the bus to the grocery store and the doctors, everything. It's what she wants. Now, if she sells the property and moves into the pickleball neighborhood, she no longer has the property to leave to her son. Her intent was that legacy lives on. She lets him inherit the family home. Now, she will be in the position to leave him money, and oftentimes that's enough. But here's the thing. You can do the gift of equity strategy, sell the property to your son with the gift of equity, and take enough profit at closing, assuming that the equity's there, to go move into the pickleball neighborhood. So he's got the legacy home. The mortgage is in his name. You gifted him the equity to make that happen. He and his family are up and running in the home, and you are in the, pickleball community having a blast. So if you want to talk through those type of details, I would welcome the opportunity to have this conversation. Using the gift of equity strategy is a powerful, powerful tool. Another place, guys, it makes a lot of sense, and we've advocated for this throughout this whole crazy appreciation cycle, is we're seeing parents of children that are, say, in middle school. And that's how all this started. This was a conversation with a friend of mine about his 12-year-old son. And he was afraid that his son is never going to be able to afford a home because prices are appreciating, interest rates are going up, and his son is going to be a regular dude. His son's not, founding Apple Computer or Tesla. He's concerned that his son is going to be a regular guy with a regular income, and he's going to have a challenge buying that first home. And he's in real estate, so he sees the value of equity. So we developed a strategy where he took an equity line, pulled some money out of his primary home. He had hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity thanks to the appreciation cycle. He didn't save his way to it or pay his principal down. The house just exploded in value. So he pulled some money out of it with an equity line and bought an investment property in an adjacent neighborhood to his community, put 20% down, use the landlord loan because the landlord loan requires no income verification from the buyer. It uses the rental income from the property. Bought the rental property, has a tenant in there making payments each month. His intention with that property when his son is 18 or 20 or 22, I don't know if he's going to go to college, what the timeline is, but when his son is ready to start life on his own and fly away, leave the nest, then he's going to have a place for him to go, and he'll be able to use a gift of equity strategy to help his son buy that first property. And I got all excited and coined it the First Home Layaway Program, and we've done a lot of this scenario with several families throughout the listening area because it makes so much sense. Someone else is paying down the principal. You get all the depreciation benefits of owning an investment property. And most importantly, you've bought a property today for your child to buy in 10 or 15 or 12 or 8 years, whatever the timeline is. Obviously, the earlier, the better. But his intent to exit that is the gift of equity strategy and selling it to his son. So anyway, I love talking about this because this is one that gets overlooked. And with a little forward planning, it's a very powerful tool. But Iris, for you, it will work wonderfully, and it prevents you having to come out of pocket with any cash and prevents your son from having to come out of pocket with any cash to buy the property, assuming there's enough equity. So I appreciate that one. Hey, Jen, let's squeeze in another question.
Ernie sent us this. I live in Texas and want to buy a rental property in Florida. Will the landlord type of loan work for this situation?
Hey, Ernie. Thanks, my man, for paying attention because we're talking about the landlord loan. And this is a great question. Yes, you can go across state lines with the landlord loan. Most recently, we helped a family in Virginia buy a property in Washington State with the landlord loan. And again, guys, the really cool thing about it is you're not having to disclose your personal income, meaning your income isn't what's being used to pay the loan. It's the rental income from the property. So assuming that you've got the credit requirements, assuming you've got the assets for the down payment and the reserves, and assuming that the rental income from the property will pay the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and HOA if there's any, you don't even need to make a profit. If you can break even on the income to expenses, boom, the landlord loan will work. I hope that helped. If anybody has questions about that, reach out. I'm always excited and happy to have these conversations. But you hear the music, you know what that means? Jen's giving me the wrap it up signal. That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this very short break. We'll be back with more of the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And if you have questions or comments, just call or text 855-462-7292. Again, that's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline. And Jen is womanning the hotline, and she'll get your questions on the air. Or head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. Click that big orange button that says get your questions on the air. Follow the instructions. They'll pop up on our end, and Jen will read them on the air for you. Guys, we've covered a lot today, and let's keep it rolling. Hey, Jen, are you ready with another question? Okay, go ahead.
Allison emailed this one. I heard you mention a special refinance for FHA. Will we qualify for this if we have a grant as a second mortgage?
Man, mic drop. Another great question. I don't know what everybody did during the holiday break, but you guys are bringing a lot of great questions to the table in these last few weeks that we've done the show. So great job. This is another good one. So you're talking about the FHA Streamline program, which requires no income verification, no credit check, no credit check, a soft credit inquiry, no appraisal. It's a very limited documentation, fast refinance program designed to lower your interest rate. And we're talking to FHA owners right now that could lower their interest rate almost 3 full percentage points. So powerful tool for both VA and FHA refis right now, the Streamline Refi program. Great question, because the answer is maybe, right? It depends on which grant program you used. Is there enough equity in the property to absorb that? And is that going to be deemed a cash out refi because you're paying off a second lien on the property? So the workaround for that is, and this is where the maybe comes in, will the grant resubordinate to the new FHA loan? If they will, you may be able to pull this off. If they won't, it's unlikely that it will work. Now, there are some grants that are forgiven right at closing. So, and others over a period of time. So if you've got a forgivable grant and you've met the caveats for that grant to be forgiven, then it would work in that scenario as well. So this is one I can't answer because it could go either way depending on which grant program you used. And guys, these are the questions that need to be considered when you're thinking about using a grant, because there are people who could have put 3.5% down, but they qualified for the grant, took the grant, and I absolutely understand the temptation to do it, but it's doubtful that someone explained this part of it to them, because you might be handcuffed into a loan program because you're unable to either get that grant paid off or resubordinated. So, and resubordinated simply means they'll stay in second position to a new first mortgage. And not always will they do that. There's language in that mortgage that will determine all of that. So, but great question. Man, great question. And right now, guys, IRRLs, right, the interest rate reduction refinance loan, or the Streamline Refi for VA, and the FHA Streamline program through the month of January, there's some very aggressive pricing based on some forward commitments. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. We've had some interest, and we've answered a lot of questions from people regarding those programs. So we are here if you have questions, and I'd be happy to deep dive it with you. But let's keep the questions rolling. Hey, Jen, can you throw me another?
Michelle wants to know, I just got a letter from my mortgage company and my payment is jumping more than 30%. They say it's because of an increase in my insurance policy. Is this even legal? Isn't there a maximum cap on increases?
So sadly, in a lot of states, there's not. In Florida in particular, there's not a cap unless you're with Citizens. Citizens does cap their premium increases. But if you jumped that much, it's unlikely that you are with Citizens. Yeah, it's sad, but at the moment, there's not a cap in place in Florida. And the last series of reports that I read regarding the insurance commissioner and caps is that they're not for it. And I'm assuming it's because they want to encourage more insurers into the state to try to alleviate some of this burden. But it's the ultimate catch-22, right? You know, we need more insurance, so we have more competition, so insurance rates go down. But without caps in place, we don't incentivize, or in this case, legislate lower premiums. It's definitely the unspoken challenge with housing in Florida in particular, because we hear about prices, we hear about interest rates. Florida has, relatively low taxes compared to a lot of areas in the country, but the insurance piece is a wild card. And the thing about insurance is, as you know, your mortgage payment just went up 30% overnight. And you may, on paper, no longer qualify for a payment that high, but you're stuck with it. And the best I can do is encourage you to give us a shout off the air. I can get you in touch with Christian and his team, and maybe they can give you a competitive quote. He has been able to help a lot of listeners in the past. I'm not making any promises, but if anybody can find a competitive rate or find places in your policy where you can make some adjustments to see if you can't lower that premium. But I feel for you. It's happened to us as well. We get those letters and there's not any relief in sight. And if your insurance goes up $400, $500, $600 a month, man, that anything is significant, but we're seeing big jumps affect a lot of people. So hang in there. We will help any way we can. And I certainly appreciate you shedding some light on this, because insurance could be the straw that breaks the camel's back in some of these coastal and fire regions throughout the country. So we have our eye on it, although there's not a lot we can do from our side of the desk other than support any legislation that may make a difference. So, and there's a whole host of reasons why it's gotten this far out of control, and it has very little to do with politics. You know, red governor, blue governor, good governor, bad governor. It has a lot to do with frivolous lawsuits and some of the... Anyway, I don't want to take this down the insurance road. We can do that another day if you have interest, but the best we can do is encourage you to try to find a competitive quote, and I'm happy to refer you to somebody who may be able to help. But with that being said, I'm going to toss it over to Jen and see if we can get another question on the air. Go ahead, Jen.
Nicole sent us this through the website. I have 2 questions. What is the maximum percentage of value I can borrow with a HELOC? And can the HELOC amount exceed my current mortgage amount?
Okay, 2 great questions. Max HELOCs that we're seeing right now are 85% of the value of the property. And you're going to add that first mortgage and the HELOC together, and it can't exceed 85%. And that's rare air. Most of them are 80%. But with a 780 or higher credit score and all of the other requirements met, there are some 85% home equity lines of credit. Combined loan to value. Again, you got to add those 2 numbers together. And yes, you can exceed your first mortgage position, but there are going to be caps on how much they'll loan you. So I would need to know a little bit more to give you accurate answers. But in general, yes, the HELOC amount can exceed the first mortgage amount, and the combined loan to value max that I'm seeing right now is 85%, although most are 80. So I hope that helps. Hey, Jen, can we squeeze in one more?
This one is from Maria. When we are going with a rec refinance, are we able to get a new appraisal, or are we stuck with the appraisal from when we bought the house?
Hey, Maria, this is another good question. It depends on how long you've owned the property. Now, there are some differences in the guidelines out there, but 6 months is going to be the minimum amount of time that you've owned the property to be able to use the current appraised value. And I'm assuming you want to use the current appraised value because it's likely more than what you paid for the property. 6 months is going to be the short answer to that one. So I hope that helps. And guys, in most instances, you're going to want to use the appraised value for the property, unless you're using one of those streamlined programs, and then it's not required. So just keep that in mind. But hey guys, wow, that was fast. You hear the music, you know what that means. We have wrapped up another week of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Man, where does time go? We are flying into 2024 and super excited that you are taking this journey with us. Guys, as always, we are way more than a radio show. We help families from coast to coast every day with their mortgage needs. So if you need us when we're not on the air, check out MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. All right, guys, Jen and I will be back next week right here. Same time, same station. Have an awesome week.
That's a wrap. Join Mark Eitel next week for more thrilling, edge-of-your-seat discussions about real estate and mortgages right here on The Mr. Mortgage Show.